Mary Margaret, I want to I'm in all of these chats, a lot of data floating around, a lot of people crunching numbers, and basically the election is going to come down to women. Right now, historically, and it's holding true right now, women are coming out in greater numbers than men. They historically vote about 1, 2, maybe 3% higher percentages than men. Kamala's doing well with women, better with women, some groups of women, and Trump is doing extremely well with men. So this hidden female vote, a lot of it is their hopes are pinned on the female vote. Is it going to come out? Is it going to come out in greater numbers? And is abortion going to animate them? Now, you're saying there could be this hidden transgender culture war vote. You call it the sleeper issue. Dive into it more. Explain, are you seeing anything in the data, or is it polling, or is it just more anecdotal?
Well, I'm not the only one calling it the 2024 sleeper issue. The Wall Street Journal actually called it that. And that's what we're hearing from people close to the Trump campaign who have polling data that they can look at that's internal. What I was told by one person that's close to the Trump campaign is that they would never be messaging so aggressively on this if the messaging didn't match their internal polling. One person told me that Tony Fabrizio, who's in charge of the campaign's polling, makes really sure that they're on message, with the polling that matches this messaging. And that really bolstered to me the idea that the Trump campaign is seeing really strong results on this issue internally as well. Penny Nance, the CEO of Concerned Women for America, she's one of the activists that's been behind this issue since way before the GOP was talking about it, way before Trump was talking about it, back when it was very uncool to talk about this issue at all because a lot of people were afraid that it might sound anti-gay or homophobic to talk about it. But the reality is that, as the Trump campaign will tell you, they're not talking about anything to do with something that the left might label homophobic or anti-gay. They're talking about kids. They're talking about keeping kids safe from transgender surgeries. They're talking about keeping men out of women's spaces, including locker rooms, restrooms, women's shelters, prisons, you name it. And they're talking about keeping radical ideology out of schools. What a lot of people told me is the left has just pushed too far on this. So a topic that once might have been taboo has been completely normalized in everyday conversation. I have a colleague that told me that her father, who never talks about politics, doesn't get into culture issues, was radicalized to go vote because of this issue. And that's what I'm hearing across the spectrum from female voters as well. They're really worked up, especially moms and grandmas, by this idea that the government is pushing this type of thing on their kids without their knowledge. And there was even a New York Times questionnaire that I read yesterday where these reporters were talking to each other about how this is a very real fear among American voters. And of course, the New York Times doesn't really believe it's an important fear or a fear that should be taken seriously, but even they acknowledge that this is something that's top of mind. And so that's part of the reason we call it a sleeper issue, is because we don't really know and we don't really have evidence right now of how impactful it will be. But the more I look into it and the more you talk to people, the more I'm convinced that this is going to play out in a much more impactful way than we might have thought.
Well, and just, I want to give some kudos here to Matt Walsh at the Daily Wire, one of your colleagues over there. What is a Woman was a huge, huge breakthrough in this. I remember getting that from like normie moms that are connected with our family being like, is this real? Like they were asking, it's like, and I think Tablet Magazine had a headline, something along the lines of the biggest advantage Democrats have is that voters literally can't believe how crazy they've become. And I think you saw that in the Charlemagne the God, the Breakfast Club clip. This is a guy that deals in politics, has a lot of these high profile politicians on his show. And even that hit him really hard because it is so insane. And I think everybody with kids understands and feels that viscerally. So I certainly hope you're right. I hope we're hitting women, the electorate, hard with this messaging because we do need to counter the abortion debate. Final 30 seconds, Mary Margaret, please.
Well, I'd just like to end by saying this is an issue that has really united people. I cover abortion, gender, marriage, family, all of these topics, very divisive. And I can tell you as a culture reporter, I see people on both sides of the aisle on the abortion issue that come together to combat this issue. I see people on both sides of the aisle that are agreeing on this that never would have had anything to say to each other before. It's a unifying issue. It's a unifying message. And I'm really excited to see how it plays out.